Hello, my fellow webheads. It's Jerry Rasco with you again, and we are here together today to talk about the Amazing Spider-Man, specifically issue number 62. So we are moving right along with the series here on my YouTube channel. Thank you to everybody who's been subscribing and following along with this series. It's been a lot of fun to go through and take a look at the artwork of all these amazing Silver Age comics. Of course, if you're new, make sure you check out the playlist. We've got a lot going back, though this is a great episode to jump onto because, yes, there's a little bit of plot going on that carries over from issue to issue, but basically we've got a new one-off story here for you to join us with. So it's perfect timing. If you are new and not subscribed, let me then please ask you to click that free subscribe button. That's right. To subscribe to a channel on YouTube, it costs you nothing, but when you subscribe to this channel, you will automatically be put into the running to win 2 pieces of original art. That's right. First, we have this amazing Spider-Man piece by yours truly. This is 11 by 17. And then we also have this Incredible Hulk piece, also by yours truly, 11 by 17, to celebrate both of the series that review series that we have here on the channel. And again, all you have to do is click the subscribe button, and one lucky winner when we get to 1,000 subscribers will be chosen to win both of those pieces of artwork. No purchase necessary, no cost to you, just clicking that subscribe button to help us get to our goal of 1,000. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about Amazing Spider-Man 62. I do, at the beginning, want to apologize. As of the time of this recording, I am a little under the weather. I've got a cold that's going around, so if I pause, if I sniffle, if I cough, I apologize in advance. Bear with me. So, with that said, let's head over, let's take a look at the comic, and let's check it out together. So here we have the cover to the Amazing Spider-Man 62. This is a great cover. I love it. I think it's really well done. Obviously, this is John Romita Sr., who also does the layouts for the interior of the book. We'll get to that in a second. But very cool, great drama. We have a character that we have not seen in the Spider-Man world, if you will. Even though, again, this just helps to emphasize that he's part of the greater Marvel universe at the time. Medusa, primarily known from the Fantastic Four as a member of the Inhumans, created by Jack Kirby on his run in the FF in the Fantastic Four. So it's great to see a new character here. Like I said, the drama is terrific. The pose is excellent. Everything moves us through the image. So you've got the title, which takes us to her hand, which takes us to the hair, which takes us to Spidey, which takes us both down to his elbow and foot, down to the title at the bottom, introducing us to Medusa in case we're not regular readers of the Fantastic Four. So really, really nice stuff. Real quick, let's talk about the colors. We have a green, we'll say villain. She's not really a villain. We'll go through that as we read through the story, but in this particular case, she's an adversary of Spidey, and we've seen this over and over again, right? That dichotomy of the red and blue character versus with the primary colors versus the secondary colors of your villains. So think about all the green characters, the Green Goblin, the Lizard, Dr. Octopus wears green, the Sandman wears green shirt, the Vulture is green, the Scorpion is green, so lots of green adversaries for Spidey. And then normally we'll see this inside and we'll talk about it more. Medusa has very red hair, but they've made a choice to downplay a little towards the orange range of the color spectrum so that it pops out more against the red of Spidey's costume. Great decision. Unfortunately, we'll see as we go through the interior, they don't do that in the interior. Now, part of that is just the printing process at the time. It has to do with the speed it takes to color. Getting it this orange with the reddish highlights or the darker orange shadows is a much more time intensive act or process. So that's why they just went with straight red on the interior. Doesn't work quite as well, but it's still strong, and we'll see it as we get in there. Last thing, I did check. So I went through my did a Google search for Jack Kirby Inhumans Medusa, and at no point did I see Jack Kirby ever putting her into this costume. Now, excuse me, that's a Google search. I could be wrong. I did not go through every issue of the Fantastic Four featuring the Inhumans to see, but typically she wears purple, and it's a much more simple costume. Bodysuit with sort of a belt, so we've never really seen her with this X cross on her upper torso before. But I like it. This is a very good, simple design. I like the little elements on the boots and the gloves. I think is great. The mask works just fine, and I like the tone. Obviously, again, we talked about it just a second ago. The green to go against the spice, and maybe that's a great choice as opposed to the regular purple to help the two figures pop against each other more. I did say, obviously, this is years and years in advance. We'll look at the indicia, but I believe this is still 1968 that we're talking about here. And then this reminded me of Jean Grey's original X Factor costume. So if you check that out, you'll see what I'm talking about in terms of the red hair, the green, and the X across the torso. So it could be completely irrelevant. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Bob Layton design, and there was lots of designs into that X Factor costume. There's a whole backstory on that you can find on the internet, telling about how they came up with different designs all the way literally till like the deadline, and changed it up eventually to have sort of a similar costume. So maybe took a little inspiration from here. Maybe it's just great minds think alike. So this is a great classic, simple, clean design. As I always tell you as we get to this point, this is a PDF copy of the original comic that Marvel scanned back in 2004. So we will see these crazy ads like this one here, advertising some sort of, I guess, protein drink or a way to gain weight. Ironic that in 1968, it would be more of a problem with people needing to gain weight as opposed to lose weight like we have today. So it's fun to see those original ads, the paper, the newsprint, all that kind of stuff. So it looks just like it would have when it was purchased from the rack. So cool stuff here. This is how we get to see it. We have our title and our credits. We have Stan Lee is still writing. John Romita is still doing the layouts. Don Heck is doing the finished pencils. And Mike Esposito is still doing the inking here. Same team we've had for a while. And to be honest with you, up until the very end of this, I think they're really hitting on all cylinders. I think we're finally starting to see this team come together and provide a more solid visual storytelling than maybe we've seen up to this date. So I think it's really, really good. This splash page is great. I love a splash page. It jumps us right into the story. Spidey swinging and something cuts his web, which has never happened before. So he's starting to fall. So great pose here of a body twisting in space as he's moving. Nice simplified background. It's very simple and easy. Some straight lines, simple buildings, little figures, but it gives us the scale of how high Spidey is in the air, and where he is in the city. So really nice stuff. Takes us right through it. There's a lot of text and stuff here on the screen. So again, just remember, folks, if you're drawing your own comics, it's easy, especially today with digital. You can zoom into every pixel to go crazy on all these backgrounds. Sometimes all you need is some vertical lines combined with, overlapping some horizontal lines, and boom, we have a vague city background that doesn't take away from the foreground character. So just something to remember. Again, another great page here. I did mention this before. I wish the hair was more orange like the cover, because you can see how it does sort of blend in around the red parts of Spidey's costume, which is primarily where Medusa's hair is grabbing him out of the air. But that's okay. Very nice angles. So what I mean by that is, we've talked about this before, but if you're new, the angle that I talk about is a camera angle. And when we talk about cameras, imagine that this is a real life scenario and all of these images that we see are still camera shots. So where would you have to position a camera in order to get this angle? So this is where you get the terms up shot, down shot, wide shot, long shot, close up, medium shot. We're referring to how we're going to manipulate the scene to replicate that idea of moving a camera around. Obviously, we can't move a camera. These are drawings. The camera is the reader's eye, so we move the image in relation to the reader's eye to create movement in the camera or the filming of the scene. So we have a down shot, an up shot. We have a wider shot where we have both full figure characters and the city in the background. It's very nice. I did a little check here with with a ruler to see this perspective of this city. It all lines up. It's very, very good. That's something that a lot of times, again, it's not important. The figures in the foreground are really the important part. And a lot of times artists will just sort of fake the perspective, and all of a sudden you'll see two lines that would cross each other. They don't go back to a single vanishing point or multiple vanishing points. That's not the case here. We have very nice perspective, so this was done correctly. And again, as we go back into space, things get simplified. We just get little dots for windows. But it's perfect because our focus really is right here on Spidey and Medusa. One of the things I wanted to point out here too is sorry, I'm blanking out. Like I said, not feeling so hot. I wanted to point out the Spider-Man webbing. And what I mean by that is the underarm webbing. So we see here, yes, in this case, it goes, we have a classic, almost Ditko-ish webbing going from his hip all the way out to that elbow on both arms. We see it over here. Now we don't see it here. We only see it on this arm. Here again, we see it under one arm. Now that's not under either arm, but we have it over here. So the webbing comes and goes. I think part of it is, to be honest, when you have an image like over here on this page where the webbing would be in front of Spidey's body, they just remove it. Just because I guess it would be harder to draw, or it's going to break up the outline of the figure. So we just drop the underarm webbing from that side and keep the other one. It happens all the time. But in this particular issue, I think we see a lot more of the underarm webbing than we did in the previous couple issues. So I just wanted to point that out. It comes and goes sort of randomly. And the other last thing, the lighting. Really superb lighting on this page on the left-hand side here. Obviously, we've got a very solid, bright, direct above light. And we see that in the shadow cast by Spidey's leg on himself. The building here casts a big shadow as well, which is really nice. And then Medusa on this flying contraption she has, everything as we're looking up from below, or in this case, it's tilted slightly. The sun is coming from above, so everything below is going to be dark. So we have dark shadows underneath the flying mechanism. I forget what she calls it. Mono cruiser. Dark where her body is essentially blocking the sun. Same here. So the underside of the legs, the backside of the legs, underneath her torso, she's bent forward. Underneath the arms is all dark. Spidey is casting a really nice shadow here. The lighting is really considered and handled extremely well. This is one of the things that bothers me a lot in modern comics is when you see the original artwork, lots and lots of people today are not doing this. They're not filling in these black shadowed areas as solid black areas. They are relying on the color to flesh that out, no pun intended, and to show where the lighting is. So they'll just draw an open figure and then say, hey, colorist, you figure it out. So make the back of her legs darker, the top of her legs lighter, wherever you want the light to come from. Well, that puts a lot of emphasis on the colorist to maintain consistency. I personally prefer when the artist handles it themselves. Now, again, with today's modern computer coloring, we could take stuff where even if the artist filled this in completely black, if I wanted to actually color in that shadow on her leg as a darker green, I could do that. There's ways to do that with the computer. But I like the idea of drawing it in black and white, to reflect where the sunlight or the light source is, and then let your colors work off of that, as opposed to letting the colors do all the work. So, over here on the next page, again, great panels, great camera angles. We've got some Dutch angles. We've talked about those going on through the book. Dutch angle is when normally, right? So every Spidey's on the building here. That building should be perpendicular to the earth, meaning it's straight up and down. The earth is flat. Everything is like this, right? This is perpendicular. This is parallel. So that should be there here, but we've tilted it, and we've tilted the buildings on the other side. What does this do? It creates drama in the visual image, but it also helps us to lean that way, which is the way that Medusa is zipping off really fast. So all of a sudden, she's gone. So that tilt really helps tell the story of moving your eye and everything that way, to emphasize that speed that she's zipping off with. So that's a really nice little subtle thing. And again, something sometimes you don't see as often as we should maybe in modern comics. Spidey heads off, and he is dealing with his own stuff. And right now, the big plot line going through here is Gwen Stacy is still mad at Peter. So she's okay with Spidey because Spidey saved the day, but she's still mad at Peter because of what happened previously when her dad was brainwashed by the Kingpin. So if you didn't see that, head back to the last couple episodes and we cover those issues. But he's trying to figure out what's going to happen. And maybe she's changed her mind because he has come to the conclusion that he is absolutely head over heels in love with Gwen Stacy. But unfortunately, she's mad at Peter Parker. But great swinging pose here. Nice close-up of Spidey casting his web to shooting his web to go swing off. Again, these pages are excellent. These are, I would rank them right up there. I would show these to anybody who's trying to learn how to draw comics. These are fantastic. Now we go to this very thin plot point. There is a guy who owns a hairspray company. He sees Medusa, and now he'll do anything to get her to advertise with them. So to be their spokesperson for Heavenly Hairspray. I'm pretty sure we've seen this kind of plot point before. I think it's in an early issue. I forget exactly what the ad is for, but Spidey gets wrapped up in that, and it's super thin, right? The plot, like, crazy. But one of the things I found is as I looked, actually, it just dawned on me. So here, this guy, I was like, who does this guy remind me of? And I'll have to see if I can find an image for that. But I think he reminds me of Milton Berle. So if you're not familiar with Milton Berle is a classic TV person. This face reminds me of Milton Berle. I actually, later, I thought it was Mel Brooks. And I have an image to show you there. But in this image, it really reminds me of Milton Berle. So if you can find one, I'm going to put an image here of Milton Berle for your comparison. And then you can see what I'm talking about. So hopefully that's the case. Good crowd scene. Little figures are hard to do. I will say this, the scale is way off. Unless this car is absolutely massive, and cars in the late 60s were very much bigger than they are today. These people are teeny tiny compared to this car. This car would be a good 4 or 5 feet in height and maybe a good 7 to 8 feet across. I mean, it's massive. So the scale there is wrong, but the crowd is very good. Great big image here. I like this. This crowd scene of everybody freaking out as Medusa lands is very good. I did note this, that the child is very cartoony. So what I mean by that is, as you look at other faces, right? So Medusa, this ad executive guy, the police officer, even the nanny who had fainted, everybody is drawn in what we consider to be, I'll say, our real comic book style. Obviously, it's still the same style. But the child here, the kid, his face really looks like something either out of like a Saturday morning cartoon or a comic strip. And this is because lots of artists have a difficult time with babies and young children's heads and faces because the proportions are way off. And so what we tend to do is draw them with the same, like this one here, up here. If you take out the small body, this looks like just a young person's head, but this kid could be 9, 10, not a toddler for sure. They just have slightly bigger eyes, but they draw them like almost like adults. And so what I've got here is a quick image just to show you the difference. That, again, this is something I found in a quick Google search to just help emphasize my point. Children's heads are way out of proportion compared to an adult head, as you can see. It's shrunken down. The eyes are much bigger. The head is much rounder than an adult's head. Whereas, then you have the toddler, it starts to grow and lengthen eventually to the adult proportions. So anyway, that's the note here. I think like I said, the crowd is great. The figures are terrific. The kid's face is just a little cartoony for my tastes. But again, I understand the difficulty there. The great pose on Medusa. Again, really like all the shadows on her costume. Makes it feel like it's this really dark green and just these highlights on the top, as opposed to, a dark green shadow and a light green highlight. Really nice stuff. Let's see here. So Peter goes to see Gwen. She slams the door in his face. She doesn't, because he can't explain himself, of course. He should be able to explain himself, but for some reason he can't. He thinks he can't explain without revealing he's Spider-Man, but I don't know why he couldn't. But I like the shadow on his face as he's looking down, the shadow on the door. Again, just really good lighting throughout this whole issue. Really impressive that they're staying as consistent with it as they do. Because Captain Stacy's no longer brainwashed. He's having a hard time remembering everything, but he does remember that Peter is a good guy, and that Gwen was feeling the same way Peter was until all this happened. So hopefully they can get through it. Medusa's going to deal with this ad agency guy. This panel's really nice here. I do want to point this out, though, and this is something that you see a lot, I think, in some of these older comics. So you can see in this image, we've finally gotten a close enough close-up of Medusa that we can see her hands. And you can see that they drew fingernails, which tells me that her hands are not in gloves. It's more of like a bracelet, and that this would be the end of the sleeve, and that her hands were supposed to be colored the same way her face is colored. But they didn't. They just continued it on through all the way. So now the fingernails look odd. So when you're doing your characters, make sure that you've got notes to the colorist about stuff like that. And here's why this happens. I'll zoom out again real quick and we'll back up. Up until this point, even from the cover, we've seen her hands have been particularly small. I might not draw the detail of her fingernails because we haven't seen a close-up of her hand. It's so small in the panel, it would be impossible to draw that little itty-bitty, or to color that little itty-bitty spot of fingernail. So at no point here have we seen a close-up of her hands until here. And now it's too late. The colorist has already been coloring everything solid green all the way. So they go, well, I guess I'll just continue. So that's where notes really can help out and let somebody know. I know you don't see them before, but later in the panel or later in the pages, we're going to see her fingernails. She's not wearing gloves. It's just like a bracelet or the end of the sleeve. Oh, and the X is missing. Wait, is the X? I just realized that. Is the X missing the whole time? No. Okay. The X is here. The X is missing on this. Interesting. I hadn't noticed. Yeah. So I just realized that the X is missing in this image. Took me. I've read the comic originally. I reread it first. Then I read it again, making notes, and now I'm looking at it a fourth time here, and I just realized that the X is missing off the front of the costume. Crazy. I do like this as well. The hair. So this is subtle. I don't know if they did it on purpose or if it's just a happy accident, but you can see a piece of her hair swirls down and frames this phone that's on the desk of this guy's this guy's desk, right? So that helps bring our eye to the phone. Now, when you cut to the next panel, J. Jonah Jameson is on a phone, and the receiver is very similar. So that is a good transition and a way to use a visual clue from one to the other. Example, a bad transition is here where we have Gwen and her dad talking, and there's no visual cue. There's nothing even in the dialogue that would connect this scene to this scene. It's just a complete change of scenes. When that happens, it's really, really important that we help the reader to understand we're changing scenes. This isn't just in another room. Now, they'll do it through these dialogue or narration boxes. But again, I like to say, show me, don't tell me. So I'd rather have a visual clue that helps transition us from one scene to the other. And this is what's done pretty nicely here with this little phone piece. I like J. Jonah Jameson, of course, is always complaining about everything. Nobody's any good. Parker's lazy, blah, blah, blah. He's moaning and groaning. And we see Norman Osborn. And basically Norman Osborn is like, shut up, you blowhard. Shut your mouth for once. And I love somebody finally stepping up and telling Jonah to shut up. It's great. Norman, as we've seen in the previous episodes, if you haven't, go back and check those out. He is having some trouble. He has these vague memories about the Goblin and the night the Green Goblin died, and he doesn't remember it. So he has these vague memories of flames, masks, Spider-Man, all this kind of stuff. I really like how when it cuts to that, we have him in blue, Jonah kind of in a light blue, this blue background. So this is the reality, the darkness, the shadow that's on his mind, while the memories are in bright color, even though he can't see them all. And this is nice symbolism. It'd be greater if the glove was more of a dark purple to help set it off. But you've got Spidey holding the Green Goblin mask. You have the Green Goblin's hand holding the Spidey mask. So that's really interesting. That's the images playing through Norman's mind and Spidey chasing the Goblin. This Goblin face, not great. Something about the big black circles around the eyes doesn't really work for me. The pose is good, and Spidey chasing him is fine. I don't know. There's just something about the face didn't work for me. And I think it's the eyes are too big. Again, big eyes typically are reserved for innocence. You want to have your female characters, your good female characters typically have larger eyes. Your bad girls typically have more heavy-lidded, smaller eyes, more eye makeup. Your children have big, innocent eyes. Your villains have beady, squinty, dark eyes. So again, simple visual psychology that can help tell the reader what they're supposed to feel about a character. One last thing on this page. I get what they're trying to do. So Norman's walking out and he's casting a shadow on this door, and they use a cross-hatching technique to do it. I don't like it. There's too much cross-hatching here. I'd rather have this background behind Jonah. Well, I get why they did it here because his hair at the top is dark. So you don't want the background to blend into the hair. So they did it there, which is fine. But just do a black background or a black shadow being cast on the door. That's my only concern there. It doesn't read as well as a shadow just because there's texture on the door and then the cross-hatching. It is what it is, but I'd like to see more of a solid shadow there. Yeah, same thing here. This is same idea. He's in his memories. He thinks he sees, excuse me, the Green Goblin and a faceless Spider-Man. So he can't remember who Spider-Man is yet, which is good for Peter. That secret is still safe, but we'll see what happens. And again, as he's walking home, it's still in that dark blue shadowy world, and the memories are becoming more vivid. And then we have this. This is a good visual transition. So we have, excuse me. Whew, gotta wet that throat. So we have Norman freaking out and thinking about Harry and grabbing his head. What am I going to do? And we cut to Harry freaking out about school, grabbing his head. What am I going to do? And we have the shortest of conversations with Peter and Harry talking about what's going on and how There is no more Gwen and Peter. It's just didn't happen, and Peter's bummed out. Now we cut to Medusa, and there's no visual cue here. There's no reason we would cut to this image. There's Peter and Harry have nothing to do with Medusa. They have nothing to do with the advertisements. They have nothing to do with any of this. So why not just move this to the next page and start there? I get it. We want large panels on this page, but maybe an insert of the characters here, her trashing, getting mad, breaking things, and getting tired of rearranging her hair in different styles. So she walks out, and this guy's not done yet. He's going to figure something out. And this was like the panel. These two panels right here on these pages, these are the ones that reminded me more of Mel Brooks than who did I say it was before? Milton Berle. So I'll show you the Mel Brooks picture, and you can see what I see and see if you see what I see. Spidey is swinging away, and interestingly enough here, he mentions that it's late. Every criminal must be watching The Late Show. Eventually they talk about the late evening news, which is usually like 10, 11 o'clock at night, something like that. But the sky is a bright, bright blue. And the reason that this all came about was, as I was looking through this, I was like, why are these little hatch marks in the sky? They can't be birds. Like, that doesn't make sense. There wouldn't be that many birds flying through the sky. Or why would you include that? That's weird. What I realize is maybe that's supposed to be some sort of a hint that it's nighttime, but it doesn't work at all. If you're going to color your sky bright blue, it's going to read as daytime. Same that for that matter, look how lit up Spidey is. All of this figure. Now, I talked about the lighting. Hang on I'm going to pause 1 second here. Okay, so we just edited out that a nose blow issue. Sorry again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm under the weather today, so bear with me. We'll edit that out. But we're talking about the night sky. So, and how bright Spidey is lit. Everything is lit with bright light from above. So it can't be nighttime. If you're going to do nighttime, do nighttime. Just make the sky black. You can have lighting coming from below, right? That's typically what happens as the sun goes down, especially in a city like New York. There's going to be lights from the buildings and stuff, and you can do dramatic lighting from below, and it's a really cool effect, but they just don't do it here, and so it becomes a little bit, it's not too confusing, it just, the visuals don't match what people are saying. That's all. The Spidey takes off because this guy convinces Spidey that Medusa destroyed their office. She's on the rampage, and he's like, okay. So once he met her, obviously he kind of knows, like, she's out there. She's a little crazy and wild, at least in her interactions with Spidey to start with. And so he's got to do something. This foreshortening of Spidey casting or spinning his web, shooting his web, whatever you want to call it, is not great. It's too extreme to the point where he just looks squished. So what I mean by that is, yes, his head is in front of his shoulders. He's coming at us almost fully straight like this, so that all you're going to see is that head and the shoulders. And then on top of it, you're also doing foreshortening with the arm coming out, but not well. So what I mean by that is, if the arm is coming out at you, so you see my arm in the little picture down here, all you can see is my hand. So if I tip it some, you might see my forearm, but my forearm and everything is going to be in front of my bicep and in front of my shoulder, so it's going to block those things. Here we have almost the opposite. We see all of Spidey's shoulder, see all of his bicep, see all of the forearm, and then you try to do this foreshortening with the arm in front, or the hand in front, and it just looks stumpy. So again, tip, if you're trying to do a character like this, foreshorten and coming at you. So think about characters that fly, like Spidey, a character that's moving in a lot of different angles. Just don't do a complete foreshortening like this, because all you're going to see is the very, whatever's in that front piece. So that would be his head or his fingers or whatever. You would drop down his hips just a little bit to show those, then show the legs below. That would help a lot. The other part that I like to do on this back shoulder, same thing. I would draw the back shoulder, and then I would end it. Like I would draw that shoulder's going to cover that arm. And instead of drawing the whole shoulder and the whole bicep, they're trying to show it getting smaller in the background. But again, it just looks stumpy because I can see the whole thing. I draw the shoulder, then I would draw the arm coming from slightly below the shoulder, so that the shoulder is covering up the arm and overlapping, creating that sense of depth. So that's why it would go back in space, not just that it's smaller. Same thing here. I would do the hand. One of these, in this kind of image, sometimes I'll even start with the hand that's in front because it's going to cover up so much, and then draw backwards from it so that I know what it's going to cover. Last thing I'll say about this panel, there are no fingers depressing the web shooter. And I know for whatever reason they've moved to the one finger, which is weird to me. I prefer the classic two finger Spidey shot. But here there's none. So what's shooting off the web? Again, it's a small thing, but when you're doing the character, know the character and be consistent with it. This isn't like, it's not like this is the art team's first issue of Spidey. Everybody knows how Spidey shoots his webs. And that's something that should be caught by editing as well, in my opinion. So Spidey goes and attacks. Hey, we got to figure stuff off. But of course, all he's saying is, hey, hang on, you got to explain stuff. And she is like, nope, I'm an Inhuman. I'm of the royal family. I don't have to answer anything. So she's very aloof or proud or whatever you want to call it. And so she wraps him up in her hair immediately. Good stuff. Again, moving that camera around, nice down shot. Then we have a nice up shot of the two of them falling off of her glider thing. We've got this shot of the guys watching from the window. And then they mentioned here the late evening TV news. So we've got film cameras watching the fight as well. Nice stuff here. Her wrapping up Spidey and him having enough and saying, hey, and pulling her hair off of it, which she's not used to anybody being strong enough to do that. So she's shocked by that, which people often are shocked by Spidey's strength. But nice page, good stuff. I like the wide shot here of them landing on the roof. It establishes where they are, which is really good. Then you have more of it's not a full close-up, but this close-up of Spidey prying the hair off his neck and then back, showing behind is him pulling them apart. Good stuff. Good, really good page. This one has a couple of issues. It's not bad. The whip part, so she whips her hair at him and, snaps it. And I thought this was kind of weak. And this is one where I understand. So we have a kind of a lower angle shot. It's not quite what we call worm's eye view, which means you literally, the camera or the view is from the ground. It's pretty close to a worm's eye view, but it's not quite as dramatic an angle looking up, but it's a low angle. And then you don't want to go with another low angle, so they went with a down shot, an up from above angle. Here, in my opinion, what I would have done, I think, is I would have done more of from behind Spidey so that you could see that hair coming at you. That's where foreshortening of that hair would have been really cool to show it whipping around and him reacting, flinching back as the hair comes by. Then when he leaps forward, that's where you move from that shot to the leap. So that's my opinion. I think that angle would have been better. Here's the other part. I've talked about this on a lot of videos. There's a thing called the 180 rule. If you're not sure, go back, check it out. I have examples that I've shown in the videos about that. When I am filming something or taking a picture or whatever, or drawing it in this case, where my camera is and where the figures line up is a straight line through them. A circle has 360 degrees. So I can go, the 180 rule is if I'm looking at everybody and we're all lined up like this in a line, I can go 180 degrees this way, or I can go 180 degrees this way. Now, if I'm offset from you, again, I can go 180 degrees. But when I cross the line and go the other side, now this is what happens. Spidey's going in the wrong direction. So here we're on his right. So the line through the two of them, I wish I could draw on this, but it's a straight line that links the two of them together. We are on the right side of that line. I can't cross that line because all of a sudden now the image flips and everybody's moving in the wrong direction. So I can move all the way from Spidey's foot all the way around to Medusa's foot, to back here. I cannot go on the other side, and that's exactly what they do. They flip the camera, so now instead of Spidey moving from left to right like he should, he's moving from right to left. So that's a break of the 180 rule. Here's the other problem with this. Again, what you want to do with your readers in a comic like this is you move their eyes through the panels in a Z motion. You want to end up with them looking to the bottom right of the page, so that especially on this one where it's a turn, I'm going to turn the page. That's how you want to do it, which would happen if you flipped this panel. So if this panel, Spidey is leaping from left to right, staying consistent with everything we've seen here, he's on the left-hand side of the page, then they would be moving towards that bottom right of the page, which would lead us into a natural page turn. Instead, we're moving away from it, which is, again, just becomes awkward and isn't the way you want to do things. So simple flip of this panel doesn't change the storytelling. In fact, improves it. The image stays exactly the same. You just flip it horizontally, and now we're moving in the correct direction and moving in the correct way to turn that page. The drawing itself is great, though. Very nice with him, right? Spidey, like most of our heroes at this point, he doesn't want to punch the lady. He's trying to be a gentleman, if you will. But at the same time, he's not going to take getting, literally being a whipping boy. So instead of jumping and leaping a punch or a kick, he tackles her around the legs. Great stuff. Now he goes to go put her into a full Nelson to try to calm her down, which is a bad idea. And she whips him off with her hair. One of the things that I do not like about this panel, or this page, is that in panel 1 and panel 3 here on the left-hand side, she is essentially floating in air. Now, you could say Spidey is stuck to the wall, possibly, and he's picking her up. Maybe. However, if that's the case, then how would she flip him away? I mean, I guess the hair, it's again, we can suspend our disbelief, that's fine. But she's also up in the air here while she's lifting a huge piece of masonry with her hair. The legs should be down on the ground to support it. So I get the feeling it's not necessarily that Spidey is stuck to the wall here. Maybe he is. But again, if he was stuck to the wall, she would have a really hard time flipping him off the wall because his powers are sticking to the wall, right? It's not easy to pull when Spidey is stuck to something to pull him off. And then it doesn't explain the floating here. So again, I would want that nice base of solid power, and then it lends itself and makes this feel heavy. When she's floating in the air, there's not as much threat because even though we know it's masonry and it should be heavy, she's not showing that it's heavy. It's not heavy to her, at least. Think about it. Even when the Hulk, as strong as the Hulk is, when the Hulk picks up something heavy, he's flexing. His feet are on the ground. He's pushing off to do it. That's how you show that the thing is heavy no matter who's picking it up. And then in the next page, we've got Spidey webs her up, and this kind of wraps things up. And she finally, they get to the root of the problem is that somebody said something. Medusa didn't really say that. What I do like about this page is how they handled the webbing. So normally Spidey's webbing is just this diamond pattern of hatched lines. Well, you can't draw just black thin lines over a character whose costume is mostly black. You'll lose those lines. So what they did is the opposite. There's essentially white lines going across that are the web, and the color of her costume shows through that, or they use white here on some of it to show the webbing against the black costume. Now, when you have a close-up like this, it's a little easier to do because, again, remember, this is pre-digital. There's no computers. There's no nothing. Today, it would be very easy. I could take and just use Photoshop and my tablet, and I could draw white lines over this all day long, change the color holds, all that kind of stuff. It'd be very, very easy to do. Do it on a whole separate layer, and it would be easy. Instead, what they had to do back then is you're filling in the black areas and leaving these areas open. And those are really, really thin. So that's a hard thing to do. They could have used a physical white media like white ink or white paint to do that, which is possible. It's just a really hard thing to do, especially with itty bitty tiny lines like that, in these other panels and, even down here as well. The other thing you can do is that you can scratch off the ink. So my guess is for a lot of these thinner areas, these real small spaces like this, these are not white lines that are drawn, and it's not black squares that are filled in. This is solid black, and then they went in with a razor and probably scraped off the ink in those line patterns to get these thin white lines, and it would show the white of the paper underneath. I'm speculating, of course, but I think that's probably how it would have been done. So the two of them finally come to the conclusion here that, wait, Medusa didn't say this, and she's not the problem, and she didn't trash the place because whatever this guy said, it was all a big lie, and he's trying to cash in on the publicity. So they figure it out, and Medusa takes off, and that's the end of the conflict with Spidey and Medusa. This last page, these two panels here, I do not care for them. One, I find this to be really weak. Yes, I understand the two figures are talking to each other, but they're also talking to each other here. Excuse me. Spidey's sticking to a wall. She's unraveling herself from the webbing. On this particular panel here, they're just standing stock still. Like, this is the most boring way that you could draw these two figures. Her hair is barely swirling at all, moving around. Spidey is standing in the most boring pose ever. He could be hanging upside down on a web line. The hair could be moving and untangling her. Or she could be using her hands and running it through her hair to get the webbing out of it. There's a lot of stuff that you could do instead of just the boring aspect of just, here's two figures. And what it tells me is maybe not every artist draws their comics in sequence. I do. So when I'm drawing a comic book, I start at page 1, and then I draw every page in order. Some artists will draw their pages out of order based on which is the most complicated, what's going to take me the most time. It tells me that there's a good chance that maybe this was one of the later pages drawn, and it was just done quicker to hit your deadline. The same thing here on this not last panel, but the third panel. She looks like she's falling over because of the way the legs are bent. She says, she's going to return to this guy, this Montgomery Bliss, and teach him a lesson. So she's striding off, but the legs don't look like they're striding off. And the way it's drawn at a slight angle. We're slightly looking down on the figures, but they are in turn drawn flush or flat, essentially perpendicular to our view. So it looks like she's falling over. Like she's almost like laying down on the ground because of this angle. So it's a bad optical illusion that she's falling instead of striding forward. How do you fix that? Show more of the top of her head, have it more a more acute angle looking down, or just do a different angle. There's no reason to do it from this far away of Spidey holding her arm and going, whoa, hang on. I'll deal with it. We don't need so much background. We know where they are. We're going to see background here as she takes off the city and the wall and stuff like that. So this could be this could be a better close-up of his hand on her arm, her looking back at him, whatever. There's a lot of ways we could do it where we don't end up with this weird drawing of her walking sideways through space. Of course, everything goes bad for the corrupt business guy, and he's out, and this other guy's the new president. Nobody cares. We'll never see Heavenly Bliss or whatever it is, Hairspray again, whatever. Peter walking around moping about Gwen, and who shows up but clueless Mary Jane. Just classic clueless Mary Jane. Being like, hey, I heard you guys are, and then here's the way she puts it. How sensitive. And now it's like, great, now you can spend time with me. And so Mary Jane just assumes everybody is interested in her. And who's her favorite guy? The one she's with at the moment. It's Harry, it's Flash, it's whatever. So I get why Peter isn't all that interested. He gives her the cold shoulder, and she's shocked. Like, oh my gosh, he really actually cares about another person? I don't understand it. So again, I've mentioned this before. I do not care for this portrayal of Mary Jane. She's a much better character and a much better person, and we'll see that later. But for right now, man, they are really dialing up she is shallow and self-absorbed. Peter, of course, we have classic Peter walking off, heavy shadows, and the shadow that he's casting is that of Spidey. So that's very, very nice. And then we get a tease of the Vulture in our next issue. So that's something fun to look forward to. And that's the end of the book. So we're going to cut back over to the desk and we will wrap things up. So there we go. There's Amazing Spider-Man number 62 featuring Medusa of the Inhumans. I really like it. Like I said, other than a few things towards the end of the book, I think the art team was on their A game for the majority of the issue. They did really great stuff with the lighting. The figure work was really good. Some of the page transitions or the scene transitions were great, more so than we've seen in the past. So I really, really like the issue. I would, especially for a one-off story, when we're done, everything is pretty much where we left it. Gwen is still mad at Peter. He's moping around. Norman is still not sure what his connection with the Green Goblin and Spider-Man is. And that's it. So for a complete self-contained one-off story, it's really good. The action is good. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It doesn't necessarily, it's not a key issue. It's not the kind of thing where if you don't have this in your collection, you're like, oh, I'm missing out so badly. But it really is a good story and it's a fun read. I hope it was fun for you. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for spending your time with me today. Again, I apologize for the sniffles and coughs and the cold. Hopefully I'll be feeling better in time for next week when we get together again and talk about even more Amazing Spider-Man. Thanks.